I guess you can see which shelf has all of my favorite books on it because that shelf is empty. Hey guys, my name is Haley and today I'm going to be filming my favorite books of 2016. There's horrible lighting because it's super rainy outside, so I have like Christmas lights turned on around my room and we're gonna try and work with it. I just turned those Christmas lights on and I can't tell if it looks better or worse. We're gonna go with it. There's not really anything I can do about the lighting because I use natural lighting. I think I have 10 top favorites. Coming in at number 10 is the Left Behind series by Tim LaHaye and Jerry B. Jenkins. I read this entire 12-book series at the beginning of this year. This series is so good. It's a Christian fiction take on the apocalypse of what would happen after Jesus calls his church up during the rapture. And I originally read it because I really enjoyed the movies, so I wanted to read the series, but I did not know going into it that there were going to be 12 books, so that was my own mistake. This definitely made it to my top 10 and is one of my favorite books, not only of this year, but of all time. Like, it's a great series, and I would highly recommend it if you are at all interested in, like, dystopian or Christian literature in any way. Great characters, great, like, sarcastic characters, too, which I really enjoy, and it has one of my favorite OTPs of all time. Coming in at number 9 on this list is Ignite Me by Tahereh Mafi. Specifically Ignite Me, but also the whole Shatter Me trilogy. If you didn't know, which you might not because I don't know if I ever actually said this in my first couple videos, but I buddy read this series with Oshina from Oshina Gotta Read 'Em All, and she was actually the person that finally convinced me to start a booktube channel. So this series is kind of the reason that I started my channel, even though I'm not sure that I talked about it when I first started my channel. But I have this trilogy to thank for that buddy read and Oshina. Not only that, but I really was so surprised by this third book. I don't normally do like 180s on characters very often, but when we got to this book and the revelation that's in the very beginning of the book, or like towards the beginning, about Warner and about everything that's been going on, got me so hard. And I can normally predict that kind of thing, and I didn't, and I was very surprised, and I really liked Tahereh's writing style, so that's why I'm including the whole series. But specifically Ignite Me. Coming in at number 8 on this list is This Savage Song by Victoria Schwab. I love the concept of the monsters being created from, like, disasters, especially the Sunai, which were very music-based, like their powers are music-based and they kill with music. And I thought it was so interesting, and the parts where they're like killing their victims with their instruments were so creepy, and I loved it so much, and I really enjoyed Victoria's writing style. Because if you didn't know, this is the first of her books that I've read, and I've also read Vicious, but I definitely like this one more. But this definitely made itself a spot on this list because it was amazing and I flew through it so fast. Coming in at number 7, I believe, on this list is Amy and Roger's Epic Detour. This book was so cute, and I'm not normally one that really enjoys contemporary, and as you'll see, there are 2 contemporaries on this list. It's not necessarily mixed media, but it includes like playlists and like clips of things they got on their road trip and pictures and everything. And I just really loved both of the characters. Like, Amy's obsession with musical theater was right up my alley because I am a huge musical theater nerd. And then Roger was just the cutest thing ever, and their romance was just so cute, and the road trip aspect was so cool. I've never read a road trip book like that I really enjoyed, because I have read Mosquitoland and I didn't really like it. But this was so well done and is my favorite of Morgan Matson's books. I have not read The Unexpected Everything yet, but I don't think I'll like it as much as this one because I haven't liked her other 2 newer books as much as this one either. I would highly recommend this one over any of her other books. Next up in the number 6 slot is The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. You guys have already seen me talk about this a bunch on my channel because I loved it. It has one of my favorite tropes, which is takes place over a very short period of time. In this case, I believe it's like 12 hours. I really like the way the insta-love was handled in this a lot because it doesn't feel like insta-love because the main character, Natasha, is so analytical in the way that she thinks, and she doesn't believe in like love at first sight. she doesn't believe that they're like destined to be together, but Daniel is all for the destined to be together thing. Just really enjoyed Natasha as a character, more so than I enjoy most characters in contemporaries, especially the main character. I really love the writing style. I love the way that this book like focused in on other characters. It'll have random chapters of like a science lesson, or like the perspective of the parents, or the perspective of a random person from the office, and all of those things. I just thought this was really well done, and it did great discussing the topic of immigration in the US, which is a very important topic right now, what with everything that's going on. And I just adored it so much. I really need to read her other book because this made it pretty high on my list. Next up in the number 5 slot was a very big surprise for me, and I don't know why it was a surprise because I should have known that I would love this book, and that is Heartless by Marissa Meyer. I devoured this book in like a day and a half. I loved Jest. I loved the version of the Mad Hatter that's in here. I really liked Kath. I loved everything about it. And I loved that it had such, like, iconic elements of Alice in Wonderland dispersed throughout this book, but in a very, like, not trying too hard way. Like, it fit into the story. But this surprised me so much because, unpopular opinion, but I wasn't the biggest fan of the Lunar Chronicles. I liked them, they were enjoyable, but I am not one of those die-hard Marissa Meyer fans. But I really enjoyed Heartless. I really was expecting to not like it very much, and I don't know why, because Alice in Wonderland is one of my favorite stories. But this definitely gave itself a higher spot on my list, and I'm so happy that I read it when I did. Coming in at number 4 is Gemma Know by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This book was just as good as Illuminate. I'm not sure that I liked it more, but I think it was genuinely just as good. I read it in literally a couple of hours. I flew through it. The illustrations by Marie Lu in here honestly made me want to read her books so bad because they're beautiful. Look at that. That's so pretty. This book was fantastic. I didn't love Hannah and Nick as much as I like Katie and Ezra like together, but I do like Hannah separately. And I am looking forward to seeing how this trilogy ends. I believe it's a trilogy. I just cannot wait for the 3rd book because this kind of ended on a cliffhanger and I was really upset about it. It also has one of my favorite plot ideas in it, which I can't say because it's kind of a spoiler. But it was so good. I loved it so much. I'm loving this series. It's probably one of my favorite series, like ongoing series right now, and I cannot wait to get the next book. And I wasn't surprised that it was this high up on my list. Next up, we have an entire trilogy, which I don't even know which one was my favorite book. I think maybe the second one was. Honestly, I read them all so fast. It was like during the Tome Topple Readathon, so I kind of... they aren't separated in my head, they just go as like one huge book. And that is The Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy by Laini Taylor. This trilogy was so good. The writing was phenomenal. I loved Karu. I loved Kiva. I loved the romance. I loved the whole angels and demons, or in this case, chimera. There was a villain in here that was one of the most frustrating villains for me to read. I loved the whole war that was going on. I literally loved everything about it. Because of me finally reading this entire trilogy in one go, Laini Taylor's Strange the Dreamer that comes out next year that got pushed back, which I was really upset about, is one of my most highly anticipated books because I love Laini's writing so much. It's so beautiful, it's so lyrical, and I literally can't get enough of it, so this definitely made it into my top 3 slot of 2016. Now, if you've been following my channel for a while, you might be able to guess what these top 2 are. Coming in at the number 2 slot, which shouldn't be a surprise for a lot of people if they've heard me talk about it on here, because I have spoken about it a few times, and that is the Queen of the Tearling trilogy by Erica Johansson. I love these books so much. I love Kelsey. Talked about this, has one of my favorite new characters of all time, which is Mace. I love this fantasy world so much, and I'm not normally the kind of person that really likes like king or queen or royalty stories, but Kelsey is just so not a typical queen, and I think that's why I love it so much, because she like genuinely makes mistakes, and she's very young to be in the position that she's in, and the addition of like the magical elements of this world are so good. And I can't wait to read Fate of the Tearling. I didn't get to it before the end of the year, but I know this is going to be one of my favorite trilogies of all time. And honestly, Invasion surprised me a lot because it took a very, very dark turn with the addition of a new character that's in this. And just Kelsey took a dark turn for a little while there. The Fetch got really creepy, and I don't know what to think of him. And I'm just really excited to see how this world wraps up, because if you don't know, it's like, it takes place in a sort of medieval time period, but it's more of a regressed society rather than actually being in the medieval time. It's our world in the future, but a lot of the technology and science that we had was lost when they were going to this new world. So it's a very interesting like concept of like what exactly this society is and how it came to be, and I can't wait to read Fate to hear the full details on everything, because this left off on quite a bit of a cliffhanger. I love these books so much. They also have some of the prettiest covers ever. These were definitely like, these were barely beaten out by this next book, and I cannot recommend them enough. I will warn you that it is adult fantasy, so know that going into it, because I wasn't quite sure, but it's definitely adult, especially by the time this book comes around, so be prepared for that. But I would highly recommend this, and I am so happy to put it this high up on my list because I loved it. And honestly, I had a really hard time putting these first two in order because I loved them both pretty much equally. But this one beat it out by just a little bit because I literally could not stop thinking about this book for days and weeks after I finished reading it. And I haven't picked up the sequel yet, and you can probably guess what it is, and that is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. This book was very, very hyped for me, and I kept saying for like the last couple of months that I was gonna read it, but I was really scared that it was gonna take over my life, and it didn't quite take over my life. It did for a couple weeks there. I definitely haven't stopped thinking about it since I read it. Back in, I think I read it in November, but the character of Kvothe is honestly one of the most interesting characters I think I've ever read from. Patrick Rothfuss's writing style is just... This is another series, along with Queen of the Tearling, that has one of my favorite side characters of all time, and that is Master Eladin from the university. I think he is hilarious. He reminds me so much of like a Mad Hatter-esque character where you know he's super smart, but he's so bizarre and weird and goofy and just nobody understands him, and I love those kinds of characters so, so much. So seeing his interactions with Kvothe in this were hilarious every single time. Like, I was actually laughing out loud. I think this sequel is going to be one of the first books I read in the new year because I just need to, even though it's 1,000 pages. I'm just really interested to hear more of Kvothe's story of his life. There's just so much to theorize in this world, and the fact that the trilogy, I think it's a trilogy, it might be a series, but the fact that the series isn't finished and that there's no date for the third book makes me really, really nervous. The fact that there's gonna be an adaptation of this, that Lin-Manuel Miranda is involved in the music, because the music is very, very important in this series, and him and like Patrick Rothfuss are friends, and it's just the best thing ever. And I can't wait for anything to do with the series. I want it all, because I loved it so much. If you have not read The Name of the Wind yet, it's a very readable high fantasy, because a lot of people don't like high fantasy because they feel like they can't get into the world. But this world is very, very accessible, so I would highly recommend it. #1 spot, and I loved it. And there you have it, my top 10 favorites of 2016. I read some really great books this year, and I can't wait to get into the next year to read even more. But thank you all for watching, and I will see all of you guys next time.